So hello all. I think we can start the presentation. I don't know if you see my screen.
Yes, I see your screen.
Okay, so the idea for today webinar is trying to understand how the climate change are affecting the environments, the biodiversity. For that, it's very important to know how you can measure the biodiversity. This is the main goal of our project, BioClima, who are managing this webinar. To try to using all the data and the spatial information from know what is happening with the biodiversity. So for today, we have like a 1 hour webinar where we can present some different parts. So I will try to present the speaker and the different part of the webinar. So for the first part is we have Thomas. Thomas is the coordinator from the BioClima project. So he will present the BioClima project. He is a research and project manager in the Geomatic University of West of Bohemia. He's a specialist in geographic informations in geomatic. He's as well a project manager and chair from the Plan for All associations, have a lot of experience in the RGC and in the RGC and European Commissions, working in the spatial solution for sustainable and regional development. So secondly, we have a GeoAtlas from Geo. That is a atlas very interesting with many information from biodiversity. For that, we have Naomi Groves-Dubois. She's from Australia, from the James Cook University as a Global Ecological Lab. She's a science coordinator from the group of Earth observations, working in the Global Ecosystem Atlas. At the next, we have Stephanie Luminas. She's European. She's working in the European Commission as policy officer in the Environment Observations Agency. And as well, she's an expert from the European Space Agency. She's specialized in the air observations and working in how the data, artificial intelligence, and digital innovations can be used for decision relevant knowledge at the European and a global level. She will offer us this European Strategic Alliance. In the other part of the webinar, we have the different BioClima use case representations. First of all, we have from the Finland, North and Boreal Arctic perspective. We have Kristin. Kristin is a senior researcher from the Finnish Environment Institute. She's a specialist in geoecologic and remote sciences for the different biodiversity analysis. We have as well the Mediterranean area represented with Yudu. She's from the University of Twente. She's assistant professor of the Science and Earth Observations Geoinformations group in this university, and she explored the complex dynamic of land uses and their implication from the biodiversity. As well, we have in the Arctic area, we have the representation from the Lund University as Sam Kai. that he is a specialist in the remote satellite sensors for ecosystem. Finally, but not less, we have Inut that he is come from the University of Bucharest, from the Geography faculty, and he is working in the Iron Gate regions from Romania. So after that, we have a time for the questions and for some conversations. And finally, Thomas has a time for working in the next step for BioClima. So I think that for now is time for you, Thomas. I will give you the floor. You will present the BioClima project. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Maite. Hello, everybody. My name is Tomáš Mildorf. I'm an employee of the University of West Bohemia in Pilsen in the Czech Republic. And we are the coordinators of the BioClima project. So I will briefly go through the basics, the quick facts and other things concerning the implementation of the BioClima. Here you can see the full title of the project, which is Improving Monitoring for Better Integrated Climate and Biodiversity Approaches using Environmental and Earth Observations. I will go to the next slide, which is the BioClima vision, which we developed at the beginning of the project together with all the partners. So we are envisioning using AI-driven Earth observations to better monitor biodiversity, streamline the data from data sources, sense data to decision making. I will have, let's say, 4 main points, which will be about the BioClima project, its objectives, something concerning the implementation, and also the impact we would like to make. A few facts about BioClima. It's an EU-China collaboration project. On the EU side, it's funded by the European Union. On the Chinese side, it's funded by the Ministry of Science and Technology of the People's Republic of China. Here again, the details of the funding. So it's a Horizon Europe program on the European side, Cluster 6, topic on EU-China international cooperation. It's research and innovation action, and below you have the funding on the Chinese side. We started last year in January, so we have more than a year of the project implementation. The total length is 4 years, so we have 2.5 or slightly more years to go still. So we are not at the beginning. We have already some project results, but the key project results will come later in the project implementation. The total budget on the European side is 5 million euro. We have 17 European partners and 20 Chinese partners. On this slide, you can see the overview of the partners on the European side. So we have big organizations involved in biodiversity, Earth observation, and many others in standardization like OGC, specialized SMEs on monitoring forecasts and so on, like MeteoBlue from Switzerland. We have EASA, we have NTNU, SINTEF from Norway. We have the Lund University, KU11, University of Twente, and many others. Just an image from the kickoff meeting last year. So it was almost exactly a year ago. And here is an overview of our Chinese colleagues. In China, it's coordinated by the Chinese Academy of Sciences. We have some representatives, the coordinator and other people from our Chinese colleagues are here on the call as well in the webinar. So going to the objectives, why BioClima? So we would like to respond to what's happening on the ground, so climate change, biodiversity loss, but we will tackle it from data. So in Europe and elsewhere, the data are fragmented. There are multiple initiatives trying to integrate the data. So we would like to contribute to that with standardization and means how to integrate them and describe them, and then to use them for analysis and improving the climate change and biodiversity loss eventually. So it's a closed loop. We are working on all sides of it. Here is the first objective. And deals with work package 1, which I will talk about later in the implementation side. So we try to do the standardization of all the data coming into the system, including Earth observation data, in situ data, citizen science data, and so on. The second objective is advanced data fusion. So it's the analytical modeling, data fusion, and using AI. So experimenting how AI can help us to improve our forecasts, what will happen in the future, and so on. The third objective is to enhance biodiversity and climate change monitoring via spatial patterns. So we are particularly looking at the essential biodiversity variables and essential climate variables, so EBVs and ECVs. You might hear later on as well in other presentations. And the fourth objective is to promote synergies in biodiversity conservation and climate mitigation and adaptation. The next one is support policies and decision making. We have multiple use cases, which I will also present briefly, but you will hear later on from colleague Yu from University of Twente. So we try to upscale from local to global, so from local analysis to go to global ones, and eventually to some decisions on international or global levels. And I think this is the last one, so strengthen international cooperation, so especially with China. So we are also aligned with GEO, UNFCCC, GBF, the Global Biodiversity Framework, and many other initiatives. Briefly about the implementation. We have multiple case studies on the European side. There are more than 19 on the Chinese side. More on that will be presented by you later on, so I will not get into details on that. Just an overview of all the work packages we have. So we started with work package 1, mainly integrating all the Earth observation data. And now we are also working on mainly work package 3 and 4, 2 and 3. And 4 is the use cases, local, but also international or pan-European global use cases. This is mainly from work package 3, where we are developing the technical solutions, the AI engines. They have 3 basic parts, which you can see on the right-hand side. I will again not go into the details, but this is just an overview. How do we go from the data sources to some decision making? And here more on the core engines, the three of them, so the probabilistic species distribution models, land cover and ecological connectivity, and the multi-agent reinforcement learning. And eventually, we should get functional BioClima dashboard. So here are the kind of key capabilities we are aiming to get to, including wildlife population monitoring and so on, what you can see on this slide. And I'm going to the end of my presentation, which is the impact. So we would like to use AI to show us the future, but of course it's up to us to make the choices, and BioClima should help to make such choices. We are strongly aligned with the EU Green Deal and the biodiversity strategy. We are linked to the EU-China flagship on climate and biodiversity, the FCB. And as I already mentioned, we are building on GEO bond, mainly Europa bond, but also the China bond, GEOS. We use Copernicus data and also many other data sources like GBIF and so on. This is just to illustrate that we are not starting the project from scratch. These are the key projects coming in from different partners from last 10 years or so. So we have multiple results from these projects which are coming in, and we are integrating them or adapting to the purposes of the project. That's all from my side. If you have any questions, feel free to ask either now or in the chat. I will be happy to answer. And I will hand over back to Maite.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone have some questions. Anyway, we can take some minutes at the end of all the presentation to have some conversation. But if anyone have some question, all people is moderating, so they can ask directly. So thank you, Thomas. Very interesting project. So now it's time to go to Naemi. I don't know if I speak well the name, but she will present the GeoAtlas project. That is a very interesting project, very related with the biodiversity for the growth of Earth observations. I don't know if Naemi can share the screen.
Yeah, I will do that. Thank you, Maite. I will try my best.
How I can pronounce your names?
It's Neymar.
Neymar. Okay, Neymar. Welcome.
Thank you. All right, let's see if I can. Okay, I'm just going to find the window. Oops.
Perfect.
We can see my screen
perfectly.
Perfect. Okay. Well, first of all, hello everyone. Greetings from the Southern Hemisphere. My name is Neymar, and I am based at James Cook University in Townsville, which is located in the dry tropics region of Northern Australia. I work in a lab led by Professor Nick Murray called the Global Ecology Lab. And we're quite lucky to live and work in a part of the world with many beautiful ecosystems and their inhabitants. So here are just a few pictures I've taken over the years that I've lived here. And yeah, I'm here on behalf of the Group on Earth Observation Secretariat, or GEO. And I'm going to present to you a bit about what the Global Ecosystems Atlas is and how it can contribute to understanding biodiversity at the global scale. So as a science coordinator, this presentation is probably going to be a little bit more focused on the technical work that our lab does on the project, and I do hope that you find it interesting. So I'll start by saying the Global Ecosystems Atlas, it's a global biodiversity framework supported initiative and a comprehensive, harmonized and open resource on the extent of the world's ecosystems. It aims to support global understanding of biodiversity, including ecosystem assessments and environmental accounting, as well as providing data to support national reporting on ecosystem-related indicators of the GBF. We're currently in phase 1 of the project, which is focusing on developing the synthesis map to help support a broad range of downstream initiatives, some of which you can see on the right-hand side of the slide here. So essentially, we're building the foundations to one day enable more advanced monitoring of the world's ecosystems, such as change detection and alert systems. But first, we need to understand where the gaps in the data exist and work to fill in these gaps to produce a more comprehensive baseline. So how are we going to do this? Here we have our theory of change, which highlights the impacts and long-term outcomes that we hope to achieve with the initiative in those top 2 rows. So we want the atlas to enable the conservation and restoration of biodiversity and ecosystems around the world. That's our main goal. And to do that, the atlas needs to be a meaningful resource for governments and businesses to use in making these decisions regarding conservation and restoration goals and activities. The components we hope could lead to this is to better understand the current extent of the world's ecosystems by first developing this baseline, this synthesis map, which ingests existing high-quality spatial data on the extent of ecosystems and then fills in any data gaps with new maps. So I'll take us through our synthesis workstream, where we analyze and ingest existing high-quality spatial data on ecosystems. So everything we come across in our search is entered into our data catalog, which presents consistent information on each spatial data set on ecosystem extent to assess whether we can ingest it into our synthesis map. So it's a growing list that currently consists of over 400 datasets, which anyone can view on the Global Ecosystems Atlas GitHub organization. And each dataset we find is evaluated against key criteria for inclusion to ensure that the data that we ingest is suitable for the atlas. So this includes ensuring that the dataset represents ecosystems. It has good documentation attached to it, and it has a validation reported. It's relatively current, and the license conditions align with the use that we need. So once the dataset passes through our evaluation process, we then cross-reference the map classes to the IUCN Global Ecosystem Typology where possible. So this allows us to be super consistent with our mapping across the global scale, while also capturing the unique processes that define each ecosystem. So this figure is taken from the 2022 publication, which highlights the importance of considering both biotic and abiotic factors in defining each class, which sets the atlas apart from a global land cover mapping exercise. So this figure also shows the different levels of the typology. So you start with very broad realms and biomes at the top, and each is broken down into more specific classes as you follow the lines down. So we map at level 3 of the typology, and these are called ecosystem functional groups. We follow the IUCN guidelines for cross-referencing to the typology here. If you do want to learn more about how we do this, you can access the full report through the QR code on the right here. Once source maps are cross-referenced, we are then able to ingest it into our synthesis map, which at the moment looks a bit like this. So about 60% of the world's surface is currently mapped to level 3 of the global ecosystem typology. So that includes marine ecosystems in blue here. And this map was produced solely from existing ecosystem maps. It includes national maps that cover entire countries like South Africa, Mexico, and Chile, as well as state-level maps that you can see in Australia, to global single ecosystem maps such as the Global Mangrove Watch, which is scattered throughout. So the grey and white areas you see on the map are actually the gaps that we're currently trying to fill through both continued incorporation of existing data as well as the generation of new maps. So how do we make these new maps? We use geospatial foundation models. So these new low-shot models allow us to create high-quality maps using smaller amounts of training data than traditional machine learning algorithms such as random forest. So within each mapping unit, these squares that we've distributed throughout the globe, training samples are annotated by interpreting high-resolution satellite imagery supplemented by literature on ecosystems to be expected in the area, as well as some contextual data such as climate and topography, and also GBIF occurrence records of indicator species for certain ecosystems. So as you could probably imagine, some ecosystems are incredibly difficult to discern from imagery alone, so we rely a lot on this additional contextual data. For example, how can you be certain that this wetland that you're seeing in a satellite image is a bog or a fen or something else entirely? Here's where additional information such as GBIF records can really help us. The occurrence of certain species of sphagnum moss helps to provide a clue on whether what we can see from space is more likely to be a bog or a fen, rather than a fen, should I say. Our training and validation dataset consists of over 90,000 sample points stratified by ecoregion. Each of these points is currently being meticulously annotated by one of our 7 wonderful analysts, although not right now because it is Friday night and I'm sure they have better things to do right now. And they've collectively annotated over 30,000 points so far. The training points are then fed into the modeling pipeline to generate first cut maps, which are iterated and improved until they can be ingested into the synthesis map to fill in the gaps. So, by having these 2 analytical streams, the spatial modeling stream at the top, which I've just discussed, along with the synthesis stream, which I spoke of earlier in the presentation, which relies on existing data, we're able to produce this comprehensive filled-in baseline of ecosystem extent at the global scale. Our additional data products include the data catalog, which is available on GitHub, which houses metadata on over 400 datasets that we found so far, as well as our training and validation dataset of 90,000 ecosystem occurrence records, which will also be an open public resource once we publish. And once we have this strong baseline, we can start to build some really exciting monitoring tools in phase 2. So a breakdown of our different phases. The proof of concept was in 2024, where we focused on community building and building this baseline map that you saw earlier in the slides with a few gaps, where now we're in phase 1, filling in these gaps. And hopefully we're hoping to finish in the next year, where we'll move on to phase 2, which is then more, we can start looking into more sophisticated monitoring tools such as time series and change alert tools, as well as mapping to finer thematic resolution, so looking at going to level 4, 5, and 6 of the typology, and also start looking into ecosystem condition spatial models, which can also vary by ecosystem type. So lots of work already done, but still lots to go. So to wrap things up, the Atlas, it's a comprehensive, harmonized, open resource on the extent of all the world's ecosystems, so anyone can use it. The Atlas combines 2 analytical streams at the moment, so we currently have the synthesis stream, which relies on existing high-quality data, and as well as the spatial modeling stream, which we use to fill in the gaps in the data. And we only make maps in places with no existing data, prioritizing local knowledge and expertise over top-down approaches. And finally, the synthesis map will serve as a solid baseline upon which further tools can be developed. So this work is not done by JCU and GEO alone. We have many core partners, funders, as well as our amazing science and technical committee, and I'd like to thank them all for the support and guidance which makes this project possible. And I would also like to thank you all for being here virtually and allowing me to share all of the exciting work that we are doing. I do hope you found it interesting, and please don't hesitate to get in touch. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions now, but if you want, we can always do the questions later, or I have my email here on the bottom of the slide, or I can send it to you. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I'll pass back. Stop sharing.
Thank you, and especially for you, because I think that is so late in Australia, maybe during the night. So
That's
thank you
okay.
to.
It's not too late.
Yeah. I think that maybe Panagiotis, you have some question. I think that you can only open your micro and have the question. Maybe it's better, so it's more interactive way.
Great. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
perfectly.
great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very, very interesting. And I will definitely look into the portals you provided. My question is about the typology. It's quite interesting, and it's a very big first step in this effort. I was wondering how the topology you have created compares to other global typologies or even continental. As you probably know, here in Europe we have the UNIS habitat types. Have you compared the typologies, or are you using them maybe as an input to help your AI systems further improve your efforts, your mapping efforts?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. And we did consider other typologies, and the global ecosystem typology was used just because it is broadly used, especially in ecosystem accounting and national reports. We are actually, there is a team currently working on cross-referencing the UNIS typology to the global ecosystem typology, the level 3, so that we can use more data from Europe. So that's really, really exciting, and we're hoping that will be done in the coming months. But yeah, you're right, there are a lot of different typologies and they all have their strengths. But we just needed something that was globally applicable.
Great, thank you so much.
I think as OGC, I propose a DGGS index. That is very interesting because it's a international index, so it's not like you don't need the geometry, only the index. So I think it's a good, and we can present them some another project that has been using this DGGS index with very nice results. So we can be in touch and we can try to help with you with this. And another question that I have is: are you using some semantic approach, some ontologies, or is something that are you thinking in using some ontology in these integrations?
In the integrations into the image interpretations?
Yeah. No, in the result, how you can represent in the result if you are using some ontology to, to list the different options as a semantic interpretations.
Right. So if I understand your question, do you mean when there could be multiple ecosystems occurring in the same location?
Yeah.
Yes.
How you can present the result? You can be different names. So you are using some ontology, some semantic approach to show the result with, that the people can understand what means every concept in a semantic way.
Yeah. Okay. I think if I understand your question, so we maintain the source classes when we present the map. So when you click on a pixel, you can actually see what the original source class was and what it's been cross-referenced to. And if you want additional information, our cross-referencing repository on GitHub is also public. So you can actually access all of the tables to show everything that every sort of decision that we've made in the cross-referencing, and if there's been multiple ecosystems assigned to the same pixel as well. So yeah, that's all available if you're interested to look at it further. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So now is I think that if anybody have more questions, it's the moment. So maybe after we can have some time, extra time. So I think, thank you, Naomi. I think that we have time. We give the floor to Stephanie, that she will present the European Strategy Alliance. So Stephanie, I don't know if you can share your screen.
Yep, starting to.
Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you,
Awesome.
we can see
Great.
you, and we can see you a slide. So
amazing, cool. Okay, so hello everyone, and also from my side, thank you very much for the invitation to contribute to this webinar today. I would like to bring the perspective on how in Europe we are strengthening what I would call climate and biodiversity intelligence in line with the GEO post-2025 strategy, or also in other words, how we move from observations, from mapping to action. So from our side, this is increasingly important because climate change and biodiversity loss are not separate issues. They are interconnected and they are reshaping environmental, but also social and economic conditions in Europe and globally. So from the perspective of me personally, working in the European Commission as a seconded national expert from the European Space Agency, the question is not only how do we produce more data, but really also how do we take this data and we transform it into both scientific knowledge, how do we use digital tools and observations to get something that is usable for decision-making, governance and implementation. So again, what we are facing at the moment is often called the twin crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. And this is also, for example, acknowledged by major science policy bodies like the IPCC and IPBES. Here in 2020, I think 2021 was one of the first workshops acknowledging that we have to work together to tackle biodiversity and climate change in a coherent, integrated manner. So we know for Europe that we are one of the fastest warming continents. At the same time, we know that biodiversity decline is weakening, for example, our ecosystems. It's reducing resilience and it's undermining the natural systems on which societies and also economies depend. We also know that these two crises, climate change and biodiversity loss, are reinforcing each other. So climate change shifts, for example, species ranges, it alters ecosystem functioning, it intensifies disturbances. And then on the other hand, biodiversity loss, ecosystem loss in turn also weakens carbon sinks. It reduces ecosystem resilience overall and really limits nature's capacity to buffer shocks, like, for example, also extreme heat shocks. So the challenge before us is to address them jointly and better also understand their interactions, feedbacks, and compounding risks. So on this, also work has already been done. For example, knowledge gaps in assessing climate change have also started to acknowledge assessing biodiversity and ecosystems jointly. So here, for example, is a report also by the published by the European Commission, but written by independent experts from IPCC, identifying a number of major knowledge gaps, and specifically for the interconnection of climate change and biodiversity loss. Here, knowledge gap 3.1, you can check it out in the report also, on understanding future global climate risks for individual systems, sectors, and compounding risks. So here the challenge that was mainly assessed for mitigation and also impacts was that we still have to work more towards developing robust projections for future compounding global climate risks. So also including the vulnerability of species, biodiversity, and ecosystems, not only looking at climate tipping points, but also assessing biological tipping points and ecosystem tipping points for societal functioning. And last but not least, also to assess the limits to adaptation. So where do species, ecosystems, and human systems reach thresholds beyond which adaptation becomes insufficient or unequally distributed? So from the biodiversity perspective with IPBES, we point to a complementary set of knowledge gaps. So the central issue is how we monitor and evaluate transformative change. So like mentioned with BioClima and GeoAtlas before, one of the gaps identified also was here better metrics and indicators of ecosystem condition, of resilience, of pressures, of restoration as well. Then better monitoring across scales and over time. And it also includes the understanding whether interventions are actually effective in delivering long-term change. But the interesting part here also is biodiversity science reminds us of something essential, that transformation is not only about the biophysical and ecosystem realm, but it is also social, political, and cultural. So here, if we want climate and biodiversity intelligence that is genuinely useful, we need systems that also think about and integrate these governance, social, economic pressures and different, for example, also cultural knowledge systems. So this is where this challenge becomes, from a political viewpoint, both scientific and governmental, institutional, political. So in Europe, we have a policy framework for action that is in place, also globally. We have we are in the implementation phase of the European Green Deal and the EU Biodiversity Strategy for 2030. We also have broader international commitments, such as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, also the Paris Agreement and related multilateral frameworks. So from the political side, this is not only longer about identifying problems, but it is really about delivering support, delivering actions, delivering tools, implementing policy. This is also where Horizon Europe plays a role, funding projects like BioClima. So this brings me a bit to the central point of this presentation. Now, how do we move from observations to intelligence? So the GeoPost 2025 strategy is called Earth Intelligence for All and aims to really foster this transformation of environmental observational data into actionable insights. We know that we already partially have strong assets in Earth observation, in situ, eDNA methodologies, acoustic sensing cameras. We know now that the work is also in integrating that with socioeconomic data, statistics, legal aspects. We know that we, in intelligence, move towards models and forecasting systems, also including the biosphere and human systems. We leverage AI, high-performance computing, do predictive analysis and scenario building to really support decisions and also improve these European, local, but also global policy frameworks. So this is the theory behind that. So what is the role of digital assets here? And I think we've heard that really nicely, and this is also where BioClima, I think, has potentially a big role to play, is we need to go from observation to intelligence, so we need this knowledge valorization chain. We know we have observations that help us understand processes better, that help us model better, also using AI. But also in this process, we need to think about building trust and quantifying certainty and delivering robust solutions to really confidently allow decision makers to use the information to base decisions on and to think about basically how to move forward with predictions that we deliver. So we know, and it has been pointed out before, that the biggest challenges here we still face is that we have fragmented monitoring systems. So we need to invest in really building up these gaps, but also the community around this. We know that we still have loads of work to do in terms of standards and interoperability. We know now with the use of more AI that calibration, validation of data sets, but also better explainability and robust AI solutions are essential. And we also know for moving towards basing decisions on the evidence we provide, that uncertainty characterization, or maybe also certainty characterization, is becoming essential and a new frontier to really tackle. So in Europe and also globally, we are not starting from scratch here. We already have a strong ecosystem of platforms that connect research, monitoring, and policy. So I would also encourage projects like BioClima or GeoAtlas in Geo to reach out to networks such as BioAgora, Biodiversa Plus, or Network Nature, as well as the Commission's Knowledge Center for Biodiversity or the EU platform supporting Commission on Policy Implementation. So this year is really important for supporting also continuity of results achieved, as well as on outreach and really making this path from scientific knowledge, or supporting this path from scientific knowledge to policy uptake, as well as better informing science of the needs of policy. So on top of that, we already have also several Horizon Europe projects that are contributing to making this path from observations to actions, or supporting this path, maybe not making it easier, but making it more readable, more legible. So I would like to especially highlight here the RESPIN project that is also working towards capacity building for IPBES and IPCC. Really informing the scientific community how to better bridge science, policy, and practice. I would also like to specifically point out here the EBOC that has launched at the beginning of this year, so the EU Biodiversity Observation Coordination Center, that is also working on the definition and implementation of EBVs. So I think it's worth keeping an eye out here. And then depending on specific use cases every project is working on, just having a look at other projects and potentially thinking about forming clusters with sister projects that work on similar indicators. Okay, so maybe also looking ahead for the next 2 years. This is still a area that is very future looking and very promising, also identified by the European Commission, so strengthening this chain from observation to intelligence to policy making. Horizon Europe continues to invest heavily in this area. For example, I would like to point out the project of closing, the second one here, closing knowledge gaps on Earth system science in support of global and regional assessments and climate policy, also including aspects of biodiversity for all European participants, as well as maybe the science policy support to the implementation of EU and global biodiversity policies and strategies. Here the fourth project, as well as building next generation scenarios for informing climate and sustainability transitions. Here also funded with 24 million as a RIA in the last one. Okay, so conclude this. Europe's challenge is, and also the global challenge is, not only to observe the change in ecosystems, in biodiversity, but to organize the knowledge we gain really for action. So that means a focus really has to shift towards connecting science, of course also digital tools, but then in ways that they are trustworthy, interoperable, and decision relevant for policy. So very concrete recommendations I would give to BioClima, but also any other project working on this or in the realm of climate and biodiversity, is to really think about and connect ideally directly to IPBES transformative change and also to IPCC, maybe looking at the knowledge gaps and leveraging these systems for better policy reach, but also for feedback, looking at what does policy need on the global level. And then also, when using AI, making calibration, validation, uncertainty, quantification, also the center of this AI-enabled decision support. So really working towards trying out how to best quantify uncertainty while providing results. And then last but not least, very importantly, I think, is to really treat interoperability, but also community building and outreach as a deliverable. So for example, making active efforts to connect to eBird, to connect to Geo, or to connect to the other platforms and projects mentioned here. So with this, I say also thank you very much. I brought some further reading for everyone who is interested. I'm happy to share the slides later, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. You give us a lot of good tips for the tenders as well. So thank you. I don't know if anyone has some questions. So, Jivan, I think that you can only open your micro. Okay.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Okay. So I have a short question where I would like to ask, how can we balance carbon storage and biodiversity conservation at the same time?
Good question.
So, well, I guess that is one of the research questions to address, right? I think I would say that is my answer. That is one of the that would be one of the active areas I would like to see researchers help finding answers for. So thanks for sharing.
So maybe after we can open again the time for the questions. So thank you, Stephanie. And now it's time for the BioClima use case. We will present it four use case for this project. The first one is Christine. Christine came to present the North Finland's biodiversity area from the boreal and Arctic area. So Christine, I know that you are here. So, okay, we can see your screen. So the floor is yours, Christine.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christine Böttcher. I work at the Finnish Environment Institute as a senior researcher, and I'm happy to present here our case study for the BioClima project, which is situated in northern Finland and on optimizing decision-making by integrating modeled carbon balance estimates and Earth observation data on natural habitats. So this work is done in collaboration with colleagues from our institute that are listed also here. Just to give you first a little bit of background and our objective. So we need detailed information on ecosystem carbon processes and their changes for different habitats to reach our national climate and also nature protection goals. And this information is quite scarce in remote areas of northern Finland. You can see here on the right upper figure or study area that is located in partly in the alpine and boreal biogeographical region. So our objective here in this case study is to improve understanding on how ecosystem functions and also services are associated with different habitats and how these are affected then by climate change and land use processes. So just to give you a little bit of information about the study area, what kind of nature we have there. So large parts of our area here belong to the Natura 2000 protected area network. And the main Natura habitat types are Western taiga. Then we have Nordic, subalpine and subarctic forests, mountain birch forests, alpine and boreal heathlands, and also different Maya types. And the area is characterized by rapid warming and changes in snow mass and precipitation. And it has been studied that more than 1/3 of these more open fell habitats in northern Finland are endangered by climate change and also by intensive reindeer grazing and their combined effects. So due to climate change, we also have advancement of coniferous tree line and increased shrub growth and melting of balsam areas. Also, the warming basically favors insect mass outbreaks that cause damage to mountain birch forests, and also we have pressures from reindeer grazing on herb-rich habitats with high biodiversity value. So on the right side, you can see two photographs. The upper one shows the Nordic alpine subarctic forest, this mountain birch forest in natural state. And then on the lower photograph, you can see how this looks after damages by this moss insect outbreaks. And then this reindeer grazing prevents basically the regrowth or regeneration of this forest. And there's now kind of secondary bare fell vegetation established. So with the next slide, I show you the overall framework of our work. Not all of this is done in the BioClima project, but our results and our work will feed into a more general workflow that goes on in our institute and other projects also. So what we would like to combine is biodiversity information and Earth observation, like satellite information, this remote sensing products for essential biodiversity variables and essential climate variables, and then also information on carbon storage pools and fluxes. And this should feed into a spatial prioritization frame that would allow us to prioritize carbon and biodiversity in spatial for spatial planning, basically, using zonation modeling. And then this supports our regional and national authorities in planning of climate mitigation and nature protection and climate risk assessments. And this is also aligned with EU policies that have been mentioned before already in the presentations, the biodiversity strategy, the habitat directive, and also land use change, and forestry regulation. So in the next slides, I will then go to more details where we will focus on in this BioClima project. So for the in situ data, we have from previous work in the area more than 4,500 field sample plots that were collected by colleagues from Park and Wildlife Finland. So this provide information on national, very detailed inventory classes that describe dominant ground vegetation. And then we have also the habitat type information for these plots using typology, this Natura 2000 typology, and UNIS also. There's information on the dominant tree, species, and bush vegetation type. And furthermore, the quality of habitats has been collected, describing this insect or moss damages, the regeneration potential of moss birch, mountain birches, and then lichen status. And this information has then used together with satellite data to provide habitat maps using Sentinel-1 and 2 satellite time series, airborne LiDAR data, and machine learning tools, as well as expert models. You can see on the figures here the inventory classes that were mapped out over the whole area, and as well as the Natura 2000 habitat types. And this information then supports also the EBVs on ecosystem distribution. We also have other information that's informing about species distribution, ecosystem structure, and function EBVs. I show here examples for vegetation height from LiDAR that supports ecosystem vertical distribution EBV. Then we have moss damages from Sentinel-2 and LiDAR data that provides information on ecosystem disturbances, and then tree species distribution from Sentinel-2 and LiDAR data, as well as we will look into we don't look into only national data sources, but also we try to utilize these Copernicus services. I just give here one example of the Copernicus service on high resolution vegetation, phenology, and productivity. The total productivity is shown here. That informs on the ecosystem essential biodiversity variable primary productivity. So these different data sets or layers we try to utilize in support or in comparison with the process-based modeling, and also to provide information for this spatial prioritization that we aim for. Then I come to the next step, the modeling part. So looking into the carbon pools and fluxes, we use both spatial data sets and dynamic process-based modeling. For the process-based model, we use the PREBAS model, and the spatial data-based greenhouse gas fluxes will be estimated for different land cover classes using approach by our colleague Maria Helmberg. Then I just show you an overview about the PREBAS model that we use for the modeling of forest growth and carbon balance. As I said earlier, it's a process-based model that simulates photosynthesis and the growth of forest at the pixel or site level. We also can do landscape simulation with that. And it has an integrated soil carbon process modeling for mineral salts based on YASU, and then emission coefficients for leached organic soils. It includes ground vegetation model, and it requires forest structural data for initial state, daily weather data, and the parameterization of forest management. And what you get out of the modeling is yearly outputs of forest structural variables, carbon stocks, and net ecosystem production. Here you can see preliminary results of this modeling of the tree carbon stock changes and under different harvest and climate scenarios. This is to illustrate what we can do with the model. Basically, on the left side, you can see information for the current state about the tree biomass in these northern areas. And then on the right side, different simulations using different assumptions about climate and harvest levels. So you can see that the current harvest levels are quite low at the moment in this region of Lapland. And the main driver for future tree carbon stocks is the climate under these scenarios. And we have to note that here we don't have included yet biotic or abiotic disturbances or nitrogen deficiency. So in these figures, growth and stocks are likely overestimated. So we are currently still trying to improve our initial data sources, so forest information for this modeling, especially for this northern habitats, the mountain birch forests. So then to the next step, the spatial prioritization that we are aiming at. So there we will use previously developed prioritization and methodology that is used to identify areas important for carbon sequestration and stores and biodiversity and combined. And this should then support planning of climate mitigation and nature protection measures. I show here one figure on the right side that provides information that we already have at our institute. So this is conservation priorities in forests only that were based mainly on the deadwood potential here, but we would like to add that together with the carbon storage and pools. And this has been done already for another study area in Finland. And we would like to apply this methodology also then in northern Lapland. And here in this figure, you can see that carbon storage and sinks, as well as biodiversity information, for example, old-growth forest information, bird indicator species, threatened species, and deadwood potential are combined in this joint optimization approach. And then we can define the priority of stands according to carbon or biodiversity goals and considering also different forestry measures. So with this, I would like to conclude and just give you a summary. So we have for this area in northern Finland a large in situ and subservation database and modeling tools available that we would like to combine. The area is characterized by rapid climate change, and land use are key pressures on these remote and sensitive habitats. And our developed integrated methodology will allow to identify valuable areas for planning of nature protection and climate mitigation measures and risk-based assessment. So with this, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to ask, to get questions and also suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kristin. Thank you very much. Wonderful. I don't know if anyone have some questions. I like very much the index for the prioritizations area. This is very, very interesting for the policy maker. I think that's a very, very interesting job. So congratulations, Kristin. Hi, Bob. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah, I know that you are a very good question. So go ahead.
Yes. I should preface this by saying that I'm working in Norway. So from us, the obvious question is, well, you're looking at northern Finland, but can you extend it over the border? Because we're doing it from the other side. Not the same modeling, but we're modeling other bits of biodiversity. But again, only in Norway. Can we actually start to move across borders?
Yeah, that would be actually very interesting. Yeah, we don't have any in situ information for across the borders, but yeah, potentially would be nice to discuss with you how to do that. Yeah. Maybe how to.
The in situ biodiversity data we have, and we've been using this for, say, for our Norwegian products. I don't know how it'll align with the Metsahallatus data, but that's part of the things that we're trying to do is to try and integrate different data types. So it might work.
Yeah. yeah, also the input data for the model is, I think, national scale at the moment. But yeah, it would be interesting maybe together with YASA to discuss also, because they work on this upscaling in the project. So maybe that would be nice to do together. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Some more questions. I think that the replicability is an important part of all the European project. So it's wonderful to see how the different regions are connecting with the result, and you can reuse the result in different areas. So it's wonderful. I don't know if anybody have more questions. So we can go to a Greek and Mediterranean area, which you do. So I don't know if you can share your screen.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Hello. We can see you, we can hear you, and now we can see your screen. So
Okay,
wonderful.
I hope my internet will be fine during the presentation. So today I am here on behalf of my colleagues at ITC University of Twente, Elna Spana Becky Roshanak, and also this work is with help from a master student. Let's see if I can. So our case study is in Mediterranean basin, and it's so as you can see from the Copernicus climate change surveys that Mediterranean basin is experiencing extreme climate extremes and more extreme and more frequent. But at the same time, it is also an important global biodiversity hotspot. So it is exceptionally vulnerable and crucial for tracking the impacts of climate change on forest ecosystem. And our study area is on Crete Island. It is called White Mountain. It's a national park. It's about 58.5 thousand hectares and representing 7% of the total surface of the island. So it has been a Natura 2000 site since 1987. As you can see that it has some steep elevation rise, and the landscape is quite diverse. It has the limestone, but also forests and grassland, which you will see later in the land use map. And a bit of the socio-ecological background of this area. So it has definitely important ecological importance and biodiversity, which includes different types of protected habitats and also protected species. But it's as a Natura 2000 site, it's not exempted from human activity. So there is grazing activity on the island in the site, and every year it receives about 150,000 visitors. And there has been traditional agriculture, including beekeeping, olives, but many are abandoned because of the climate change-induced water scarcity. So the main pressure on this study site or on our study site is climate change caused such as increased fire risk, habitat loss, and also changes in ecosystem function and biodiversity loss. So this is the land use or land system map rather. It's based on a European land system map that I created in 2021, where we combined land cover, land use, and land intensity. So what you can see, don't know if you can see my cursor. So for example, it has mostly low intensity forest and grassland and some cropland as well. But large parts is also like the mosaic of forest and grassland and even crops. But there's also large areas that is bare and rocks, so just without vegetation. And what we did also is a land use prediction for the future and for 2050 under multiple scenarios. You may wonder why this is a bit coarse, because we have definitely higher resolution land cover maps for Europe, but as land system, it makes more sense to consider it as a landscape. So all this is in under 1 kilometer. And what we did is we used EPA's Nature Futures framework to prioritize protected areas under nature for nature, nature for society, and nature as culture, 3 scenarios. But for small areas like here, we don't see much change, and most of the land systems we see current will remain, maybe with a bit small areas change. But the climate change stress will definitely be more significant. So with the BioClima project, what we plan to do is trying to link ECVs and EBVs, so essential climate variables and essential biodiversity variables, such as primary productivity, ecosystem disturbance, and ECVs, including land surface temperature and LAI, etc. For example. So today I'm only presenting some very preliminary results or work that have been done by our colleagues Elnas, Pana, and also the master student. So there is much more in the future. So what this is an example of the land surface temperature map of the study area, and because we are only interested in like ecosystems with forests, with trees, so with trees and grassland. So we masked out a large area. And this is a example, but you can see this is an example of land surface temperature, but you can see some extremely high temperature areas. And based on this monthly land surface temperature analysis, we used a geospatial analysis technique called hotspot analysis to identify persistently hot areas. So if certain cells reoccurring as hotspots in 70% of the months that we calculated, they are identified as hotspot. So you can see that if you remember, these areas are partly mostly grassland in the land system maps, with some trees, so mosaic area. So this is the summer months from June to, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Let me just put my cursor on. So these are June and August, and the 3 maps below are from June, July, and August. And so this slide showed you where the hotspots are, and in the next few slides I present to you when you see this hot period. So you can we did a regional monthly mean land surface temperature, and we can also use cursors. So of course there is seasonality. So what we did is we did we calculated the anomaly, a linear trend line from 2005 to 2025 which shows an overall increase in monthly LST anomaly. So basically the temperature, the land surface temperature is on the increasing trend. And this is a spatial trend. So we applied LandTrender, which is Landsat-based detection of trends in disturbance and recovery, to identify the behavior or the significant drops in this LST trend. And this is the spatial pattern. And the different colors represent different patterns of temperature change. So you can, as you can see, most of the areas are having the increase also, breakpoint of increase. And here are 5 typical trends from several points. And the blue line so represents observed land surface temperature, and the red line is fitted trend. So what you can see is what we want to show you is, so in 2012 you see this significant increase. So sometimes the peak temperatures can reach 40 degrees in the year of 2012, and sometimes the identified breakpoints by land trender were nearly 6 degrees higher than the previous period. So of course, because land trender identifies trends, so sometimes it's smoothed out, but in 2012, it's most times it's identified as a breakpoint, as a change point. And I show you some other years, so you see what I mean. For example, in 2008, you see some in the blue line, which is observed land surface temperature, you see some big drops, big changes as well. But often this red line, that is the trend line, do not recognize it as a breakpoint or change point. So which shows 2012 is exceptional. And what we did next is, so this is land surface temperature, and we want to associate it, link land surface temperature with climate, with drought specifically. And we use the SPER, Standardized Precipitation Evapotranspiration Index, which is a drought index, to relate these behaviors to drought. So if you just want to use some visuals to help you understand. So extreme drop, which is a sharp negative spike. So the central line is neutral, and if it's more negative, it means it's drier. So this is the extreme drop in 2012, which linked with the exceptional spike in the previous slide. And in 2008, it's less so. This is mostly ECV, so essential climate variables. The next, as I mentioned, what we want to do in CREATE is to link ECVs and EBVs. And the next step is to analyze land area, leaf area index. What we have already collected the data, thanks to the students also and our colleagues, which we used fisheye cameras we collected 28 plots and total image of 140. So we can use this to calculate the leaf area index, and we can link this and also to upscale this locally collected leaf area index with satellite image to scale up, so we could map out without much effort in the future to calculate LAI and then link it with LST. What I think is also important is to link it, to explain it by also different land use types, which also Christine, the last presenter, introduced. And this is what I will introduce to you about our case study, and these are some results from the preliminary analysis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You. I don't know if anyone has some question. For me, it's very interesting because I think that it's very similar from the problem that we have here in Seville with a high temperature, more than 40 degrees in summer. So it's very interesting, especially for me, your results. So I don't know if anyone has more questions.
If we have difficult questions, I will. I believe also my colleagues are here. I will deliver the questions to them.
So well, we can go to the next speaker and have some time at the end to have more questions. Thank you very much, you. Now it's time for the Arctic European area. Sansai Kai is a researcher from the Lund University. He will present the use case. So I don't know if you can share the screen. Okay, you can share.
Yes.
We
Can you see
can
my?
hear you. We can see your screen, and now we can see you. So
Okay, great.
thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. And I'm Zhanjiang Cai, so from Lund University. And today I will briefly introduce the HRVPP products.